Morning all. Well, where are we for today's walk? Well, a couple of clues, just cop a load of this lot. Further clue was that this handsome looking chappie was actually stationed here during most of 1943.
And here's where our real job begins. We're in the Graduate School of Gunnery now, learning it in combat, trying to put it on the field.
If you didn't work it out, we're at the old airfield near Polebrook, which was a US 8th Air Force heavy bomber base. I think the 351st Heavy Bombardment Group. Kingscliff was a fighter base. Kingscliff, where we were a couple of weeks ago, their planes would basically take off to escort the bombers from here, and Peterborough's two other heavy bomber bases at Deanthorpe and Glatton, or Conington as we know it today. But this was the big one. Polebrook was the biggest of the three. I think there were well over 300 missions, multi-bomber missions flown from here, and I think it was 175 B-17s were lost in action from here, so it's a very poignant place. You know, a lot of very, very brave personnel lost their lives that were stationed here at Polebrook, and unlike Kingscliff, there's very little indeed left of the airfield. It really was seriously dismantled after the war, and even from aerial photographs it's hard to pick out evidence of an airfield, but there are bits and bobs if you know what to look for and where to look for them, and hopefully I can give you an insight into a few of the things that are left. We're currently in the car park where the memorial is, and the car park is actually the last serious remnant of one of the runways. The runways here were completely lifted and taken away by a company that was going to make use of the materials, but they left this one section right at the end of one of the runways to act as the car park for this memorial site. They did tarmac it over, which I thought was a bit sort of unbefitting really. I think it would have been better if they left the hard, typical US Air Force concrete down, which was what the runway was, rather than try and tarmac it over. But Mother Nature's getting its own back now, because the tarmac is starting to lift and the old runway's coming back again, so it will return. But that's where we are today. We're at Polebrook Airfield. Well, this is the very end of the runway, so planes would be turning around here and taking off behind me. As I say, the tarmac's starting to wear off now, I'm pleased to report, and you're getting some patches of original runway, which is in this very typical bland concrete, as I say, is very typical of US airfields. Another remnant of the old runway are these things that occasionally become on surface as the tarmac wears away. I'm not an expert on runway lighting, but this metal housing is part of the lighting of the runway. There would be a huge bulb in the centre of that, and that would light the runway up at night time, and these would run all the way down the runway, but this one's come to the surface. Polebrook had, apart from its existence under the RAF and the US 8th, once it closed down and got decommissioned in the late 40s, it sat pretty dormant for 20 odd years, but came back to life again in the early 1960s during the Cold War, when, believe it or not, they had a missile base right in the centre of the airfield, a well protected Thor missile base. I'll try and put up a picture if I can find one in the corner. But yeah, quite sinister. They had some pretty powerful missiles sighted here, ready for use if the Cold War had gone in the wrong direction. So it came back to life in the 60s for about 5 or 6 years before thankfully closing down and finishing for good at the end of the 1960s, when it was basically all dug up, ripped up, everything was removed, or most things were removed. When we were at Kingscliff, we took a quick look at the Battle HQ, which I mentioned then was always a building that was hidden just off the airfields as a sort of location where the people in charge of the airfield would retreat to if the airfield was under attack, ground attack, where they would then send out instruction for its defence. And I said at Kingscliff it was always the last building, would always be the last building to be removed from these airfields when they closed down, because they were so solidly built. And suffice to say, the Polebrook Battle HQ still stands, and it's in the hedge on the right here, just ahead of us, just to demonstrate how well hidden it was. Trust me, it is in this hedgerow, and we'll take a look in a second. You can just see it through the hedgerow. It is visible, but well hidden. There you go, the rather sinister looking Polebrook Battle HQ with the telltale top here. Very, very solid piece of kit this is. No wonder it's still standing. Unfortunately, as with all battle HQs, this one's flooded, just the same way as the Kingscliff Battle HQ was flooded, but we'll just check it out. I pretty much know that it will be flooded. If I can find the entrance. There we go. Yep. Try not to fall in here. Flooded. I'll see if I can get the camera around the corner. I certainly can't get there, but you might be able to have a look. Just bear with me. Yeah, you can't see too much. It really is dark down there. I'll put a photograph up so you can get a better shot. A photograph I took a few years ago with a flash gun. Inside there's nothing to see, even if you wanted to get wet and wade in there. It's just a series of rooms down there, and they're all empty, but yeah, it's a site of great importance to the airfield, and as with Kingscliff, as I say, it'll stand a lot longer than I will stand for. It's a survivor. This signpost features on an iconic picture, an iconic photograph from Wartime Polebrook, which I'll put up in a second. Okay, we're wandering around now on the main road, from the sort of memorial site round to what used to be the main entrance to the airfield, and also the main entrance to the technical site here. I'll put a little map up so you can sort of see the path that we're taking. If ever you do come this way and walk along here, be warned, this is a busy road. You get a lot of lorries on here, you get a lot of fast drivers on here. I found this interesting photograph from Wartime, taken literally where we're walking now, albeit the trees don't look so big. And you can see they even had a few accidents back in wartime. I'm just coming up to what is today the entrance to the sort of industrial park element of Polebrook Airfield. There are still a couple of large buildings down the end of this road, to which you get a lot of lorries moving to and fro, but we'll be coming back here later on the walk. We've got to put some miles in first to a different site, but that's the main Polebrook Airfield entrance, as was in wartime. But as I say, we'll feature this a little bit later on the walk. Right, we're making a long trek through the woods here from the airfield site, and a lot of the people who served at Polebrook made this very walk routinely, because the most valuable assets on these airfields were not the aircraft, but the personnel that flew them and flew on board them, gunners and whatever, and they were well protected. And they were protected by getting them the hell off the airfield whenever they weren't flying, thinking being that if the airfield got bombed, you could replace the planes a lot easier than you could the personnel. So the personnel were kind of stationed when they were not operational away from the airfield in the woods, and this is true of all the airfields. You'll find surviving airfields around the country, so they would move them off and build little communal bases hidden in the woods. They were called dispersed sites, and if you get hold of the Air Ministry plans like I did many years ago, you can find where these dispersed sites were. Now most of them are gone because they were very temporary. They were wooden huts. There's just nothing left. Sometimes you find the foundations of the buildings, sometimes you find nothing, but occasionally there's still something standing. And the reason we're making this trek is to get down to what was known as the dispersed site, or communal site number 5 at Polebrook, which housed the massive dining rooms where the airmen would come to eat, places like the officers' mess. And those buildings are still standing. You can't actually get to them anymore because they're fenced off. You used to be able to get to them, and I have photographed them, and I'll share some of those with you when we get there. But it's still somewhere I like to come to whenever I get a chance. Yeah, it's quite an emotive place, and it's always a weird feeling to think this path that I'm walking on was trodden by so many brave personnel back during wartime, and it's quite a trek. If you can imagine, they've been out on a mission and come back, and they've got to do this to get back to their communal site. It's quite a trek. Another person who may well have walked along this path on many an occasion during 1943 was the legendary film star and heartthrob Clark Gable, pictured here. Clark Gable was stationed at Polebrook during 1943. He'd come over to do a sort of recruitment video for gunners for the B-17s, and he went through all the training in the States. He was a trained and qualified gunner, came over here with his own assembled film crew, flew many missions. No one's quite sure how many, they always say 5, but I'm told it was more than that. He even got shot up on one of the missions and was very lucky to survive. I think somebody said the bullet went through his shoe, but yeah, he came very close to losing his life. So he certainly got down and dirty, as it were, with the airmen here, and was well respected. And he produced a movie called Combat America, I think it was. I've got a copy of it. It's not a great movie, but it did its job because it was Clark Gable, and it was successful in its role of getting people to sign up as aircraft gunners. But yeah, Clark Gable was here at Polebrook and may well have walked along this path. I've always loved the soundtrack in this wood. It's the most perfect and peaceful soundtrack, and you always hear woodpeckers. I'm going to shut up in a second and you'll hear woodpeckers. Sounds like a pneumatic drill. There you go, that was a woodpecker. And again. Here it is, site number 5, absolutely fantastic place. These 3 structures here are all really part of the same building. It's the dining halls, and there's 3 of them joined in the centre. As you can see, they're fenced off because they're pretty much in a dangerous state now. One of the dining halls. I'll put up a picture in a second that shows you how it actually looked during wartime. This is the water tower that stands on site number 5. Standard Airfield, wartime Airfield designed water tower. You can see the terrible state some of these buildings are now in, and why they're wired off, because they cannot have more than a few years left, if that, before they collapse. It's so sad. It really is so sad. You know, someone somewhere should be buying these up and restoring them and protecting them, so that maybe school kids and whatever can come and see a bit of real history from the wartime. Right, this building is particularly special. The last time I came here, I found some what they refer to as wall art on one of the back walls that had been painted by the airmen, because there used to be a stage in front of this wall where bands used to play, and they'd painted a picture of a drummer and certain members of the band on the wall, and if I zoom in you'll still see what's left of it, and there isn't a lot. There you go. The character on the left is the drummer. Just see his round drum in front. Sad to see a bit of graffiti on it, but there you go. Some real authentic wartime wall art. Absolutely fantastic, and should be preserved. But it'll go when the building collapses. Wonderful. Great to see that again. So you have it, site number 5, the best preserved element of Polebrook Airfield, still standing. And as I've said, yeah, it's a very emotive site for me. You know, it's just the thought of the people that used to be there, that are no longer with us, that we owe so much to. You know, most of them have long since gone, but those still alive, if they could see those buildings now, it would bring back so many memories for them, and you know, we just let them fall down, and I'll never get that. I'll never understand that. You know, there just should be an organisation somewhere that says, we'll buy that land off you and we'll make good those buildings, because so few people know that they exist. And you can imagine school parties coming out here, and it's something you can reach out and touch. It's recent history, but it's important history. And yeah, we should look after places like that, but yeah, they're not going to last much longer. They're going to be gone soon. But it was great to see that wall art again. I never thought I'd ever see that again after it was fenced off. So yeah, that was brilliant. But like I say, sad to lose it. Right, just coming out of the woods now, back onto the road, and we're right at the very corner of the airfield now, and there's a pillbox. Well, there used to be a big pillbox here guarding the corner of the airfield. I was going to go and take a look if I can get in. There it is, being submerged again. Ugh. This is a rare design of Pillbox because it's got 2 layers. It's the only one I've ever seen. Also has 1 or 2 other features, such as it's got an attachment here with some sort of bracket to hold the gun, probably a machine gun, would have sat. Bear in mind this would have been open fields back in the day. Again, they've all got these well-worn supports here for something. It must have been a gun. Right, we're coming back up to the main entrance to the airfield again, just in the distance. Apart from the entrance to the airfield, this was also the entrance to the technical site. Whereas the ground crews got dispersed into the woods, you had to have people actually on the airfield around the clock, mechanics, engineers, scientific support people. There were all sorts of buildings here, parachute stores, Bombsight stores, heaven knows what, and these people had to stay on the airfield, and they would stay in a busy and thriving technical site, as it was known. I'll put a map up in the corner, it just shows how complex and busy this site would have been in terms of its layout, because today there isn't a whole lot there. But we will go and have an explore because there are some things to see. But it was a very, very busy place back during wartime. In wartime, this is about as close as we'd get, because there'd be guard posts here and you simply wouldn't pass this point. I'm going to put up some brilliant footage from this very position in a moment, from wartime, showing this gate, showing, well, not literally this gate, but showing this entrance with a small guard post in the centre of the road. In the background you'll see some vehicles which were the fire vehicles for the airfield, just to the right, and that's where we're standing now. So this is pretty much the modern day version of that footage, just coming in through the gate. That area there was where those buildings with the fire vehicles outside. You've then got the main road into the airfield, and on the left here, just behind these concrete posts, was the main guard office. Another piece of great footage looking back at the site entrance that was captured during wartime from this exact point. And this is that site today. If you imagine a chap coming towards us on his bike. Unbelievable with all these trees here, but the row of huts would have been over there. The same location today, to our right, just in front of that mound. On the ground in front of it was the sort of site HQ building which I'll show you in this footage here of somebody coming out. And that building would have been right in front of us here. Long since gone. When you're walking through these woods, it's easy to think there was never anything here, but you'll have seen from that plan and that map how busy this site was with intercrossing paths, and you get little places like this that help you get some bearings, and with a bit of digging around with your boot you can kind of try and work out where we are. We're clearly at a crossroads here with a path going straight on, a path that went to the left, and another path that heads off to the right, and there should be curbstones to prove the point somewhere. You just have to prepare to kick around with your boots and try and remove some of the debris. There you go. There's the curbstone. Come here with a shovel and just uncover all this, and that curb would sweep around the corner to that path. So I pretty much know where I am, and I've marked it on the map with a red cross. Right, we're now coming up to the only buildings really that still stand on this site of any significance, and they didn't have great significance, but they always look spectacular as they appear out of the woods. Pretty big things. There you go. Covered in graffiti, but it's the age we live in. Right, this used to be the generator building, so basically if an air raid took out the mains electricity, or for any other reason come to that, it was taken out, then the airfield would continue operating with the generators that would be held in here. I don't know whether there was one up and one down, I haven't got a clue. Don't know much about generator buildings, but that's what this is. There would have been something on these concrete plinths. Something quite big, I would imagine. But that was its purpose, to keep the electricity flowing. There is a second smaller building alongside it which is unmarked on the Air Ministry map. It's there, but it's not designated its own number, so I can only assume it's something connected with the same building. And these stone plinths probably suggest, again, there was a generator in here. Serious artwork in this one. first cuckoo of summer. Very nice. Coming up to another intersection of paths. There's the telltale concrete underneath what seems to be a thin tarmac covering. There's a telltale rise in the ground here, which can only be an air raid shelter. Still covered over. Yeah, I can see the entrance, I think. We can get through to it. Classic Stanton air raid shelter. Very, very good condition. I can see another one in the distance that certainly isn't covered. Another one in very good condition. That would be the escape hatch up there. Would have a cover on it. But if the main entrance got damaged or blocked as a result of a blast, back down there, the escape hatch was your only way out. This area of flat land bordered by a sort of low wall here was the officers' mess. That's all that's left of it. Just been digging around with my boot just to prove I'm in the right spot. But yeah, that's the flooring of the officers' mess. Nothing to see, but if you've got the plans you'll know where you're standing. Just walk down the other end of the officers' mess building where there's a clearer piece of foundation. It's amazing that right in the centre of what would have been the mess room is a tree. Crazy. Now, I certainly wouldn't have been standing here back in wartime. This foundation was the Bombsight building. The Bombsight building was probably the most secure building on the airfield. It's where they housed the Norden bomb sites that were being used on the B-17s. The Americans were highly secretive and protective of these bomb sites, used supposedly for accurate bombing. They didn't want the enemy to get hold of them. They didn't even tell, well, the Brits knew they had it, but they wouldn't share it with the Brits. When the planes landed here, they brought the bomb sites to this building, and they were protected with security. You just would not have gotten anywhere near this. It was a highly secretive piece of equipment, and this is where they stored it. It looks like nothing. I'm sure it looks a bit more imposing than this, but it was just a brick shed. But yeah, this was the bomb site building, or what's left of it. Right, we're back on the main site entrance road now as it heads up towards where the aircraft hangars were. You can see another likely air raid shelter that rise in the ground as a telltale sign of an air raid shelter. On our right here is one of the only, well, there may be other buildings I've never seen, but I don't think there are. This is probably the other building still standing and in private use. It was an electrical substation of some sort on the airfield. It's marked as substation. Quite a big building, but a survivor from the airfield days. That's the surviving remnants of the, and I quote, lubricants and inflammatories store of the airfield. So I guess you wouldn't want to go near that with a lighted match. Right, we're coming up now to a hangars site, which is private, but we should be able to see something. Oh dear. God dog. Never work with children or animals. That was the one of two surviving aircraft hangars, but that's the main one. Still being used today, and the business owner, although I've never been in there, he's very sympathetic to its history. I'm very proud of its history, and I'm told on the inside of that hangar there's a lot of things on the walls commemorating the old airfield, so it's well looked after. It's still a fantastic site. Yeah, one day I'll perhaps get a chance to go in there, but perhaps not with that dog there. Trying to imagine what this building looked like, in the sense of what these sort of stone plinths are lined up along the middle. This was the motor transport maintenance area, so this is where jeeps and whatever would be brought for maintenance work. So I don't know. No idea what these blocks were. A good old Peterborough brick. Eastwoods, I think Eastwoods I may be wrong about this, but I think Eastwood's brickworks is pretty much underneath where Hampton Hargate is now and where Serpentine Green is now. I think that's where Eastwood's were. I think it was Orton Brickworks were owned by Eastwoods, or was known as Eastwoods. And it says underneath it, I don't know if you can read it, it says fortification, which if you say it quickly enough over and over again, you get to the word fortress. And Peter Boyens will know all about fortification, and that's where the name fortification came from. Fortified. It was a way of making bricks. It was a method of making bricks. So there you go. I've just noticed these little square plinths run all the way along this track, and are clearly some sort of path boundary, probably to stop vehicles driving into whoever was working here, because they continue way on into the distance at the foot of that tree and beyond. This very long set of foundations looking straight down through the camera is one of the dining rooms. And if you think back to Site 5, when we first saw it in the woods, there were 3 long thin buildings side by side joined in the middle. That's exactly what this is. It's exactly the same design. This would have been one of the buildings, and if I look to my left, there's another one here that ran in parallel, and just beyond those trees in the centre of the picture there's another one. All 3 of them ran in parallel, and these were the massive dining quarters for this technical site. Nothing left now except the hard standing foundations, which are just slowly being buried by debris. But you can come here with a broom and do that, and you're back down to the foundations. It will disappear unless somebody does what I've just done. But yeah, these are the dining rooms. No idea really what this is. This is in the this is again still within the dining rooms. This is the section that joins the 3 huts together. It runs across all 3 of them, and I think it's probably a cellar, is my guess, because there's a ladder there. So I would imagine this was a cellar where they stored stuff. Partly exposed shelter. Still well covered on this side anyway, but the top's a bit exposed. Let's see if we can get around the side. Another one in very good condition. Escape hatch. Yeah, interesting. Sure, that's a wartime relic, but yeah, different. No idea what that is either. Seems to be random things, I think I'll describe them as. I suppose sculptures, random sculptures of some sort dotted around here. Interesting. Trying to find the entrance. It doesn't look too safe. Could clamber down, but I'll give that one a miss. Oh, resting place. Okay, we're going to be heading off the site in a moment. It's you know, if you've got kids, this is a nature reserve. Worth mentioning that. First of all, this is a nature reserve. You can come here and you can wander around. Obviously, stay off the hangar site. Watch the main entry road because there'll be lorries on it on a weekday. Not so much at the moment, but in more normal times. And yeah, stay on the grass either side of the main entrance road, and there is plenty to see. If you want a copy of the plans, you can get them from the Air Ministry, or sorry, from the RAF place at Hendon, RAF Museum. They're Air Ministry plans. You won't find an Air Ministry anymore. That you can buy detailed copies of the plans, or if you're just popping up here and want to know what you're looking at, give me a shout, and I'll send you over copies of whatever might be useful to you. But yeah, as I say, to nature reserve, it's great for nature anyway. It's a very peaceful wood, plenty of paths to walk on, but there must be a dozen plus air raid shelters. Kids love going down in those shelters. Tell them to bring their torches. It kind of brings wartime to life. It gives it a sort of a relevance that no book can, and it'll start off their curiosity about what happened in the war, and it's a good starting point. So be careful. If it looks a dodgy air raid shelter like the last one, don't go near it, but most of them are made to last, and they do last, and they're perfectly safe. So yeah, kids love going in there, and you can tell them all about it. You might have to look it up first, but yeah, it's a fantastic place, very peaceful place, and yeah, very poignant as well when you consider how many people were here when this wasn't woodland, when this was buildings, and how many of those people lost their lives in the war effort. But yeah, worth a trip out. I am heading out, but 2 shelters here, actually 3 shelters. That's pretty remarkable. 3 shelters in a line here. We're pretty near the entrance now. If you come in the main entrance of the site and turn right, you'd be roughly where I am now. Well, won't be going in that one. Flooded. It's unusual. Right, back to the entrance. Those 3 shelters together were just here in the woods. So just turn right the minute you walk onto the site and you'll find those. Albeit 2 are flooded and you wouldn't want to go down anyway, but the other one was good. Well, that's it. Back to the car now, heading home for lunch. yeah, still a fascinating site. Not so much to see, but if you've got plans like I have, it makes it a bit more interesting that you can make out what some of the things lying around still are. It was fantastic to see the that wall art again at Site 5. That's a bonus for me. I wasn't expecting that today, so it's nice to see that. If I never see it again, I've got it on film, so I'm happy with that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back out at the weekend. I don't do 1 hour a day exercise, I tend to do 3 hours every 3 days. So yeah, back out at the weekend, maybe back over in this direction. There's at least another walk in this area, not an airfield walk, but a different walk, so I may well be coming back here, but yeah, I might see you then.